All right, welcome to the podcast.
We're back.
We're back after a couple weeks hiatus.
I didn't like it. I didn't like the hiatus.
I didn't like it either, but I think, if you never go away, people can't miss you.
That's right.
Sometimes it's good just to step away and
make them appreciate us.
build up the anticipation.
That's right.
Bit,
people need to not take us for granted and just assume we're going to be here every week.
Yeah. Sometimes you can't just be gold all the time. I know people think that because up to this point, like everything they've seen has just been us being golden.
Perfect, yeah.
Sometimes you just got to recharge a little, build back up.
That's right.
All the expert movie opinions, and then
good chance to recharge our movie brains a little bit.
That's right.
Actually, everybody's probably like, oh, they were gone? I didn't even notice.
That's probably
Let's be
reality.
Real. Everyone's like, oh, yeah, I forgot about those guys.
But the reality is not always as fun as the way we choose to interpret it.
It's our podcast. It's our interpretation of what happens.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Today, fitting for the season that we're in.
Yeah, you gotta follow certain rules.
Yeah, and we say it all the time. We're a podcast for the people. We care about the people.
We do.
And the people are in Christmas. It's Christmas season. They're in the Christmas mood.
Yep.
We're going to talk about Christmas movies.
We are.
Despite the fact that I still maintain, for the most part, movies based on holidays are hot garbage.
I'm going to agree with you. We'll get into this.
So people may not. I say we're for the people.
We're here to tell the people that their opinions are wrong.
Yes. We're talking about the subject matter they want. Our takes may not.
They may not
have some spicy hot takes.
We might
on this.
We might
on this Christmas movie special.
I know I've got a hot take. I'm going to present at some point.
Great. So I'll tell you that I made a very informal, quick list.
Same.
Of like, okay, what are my favorite Christmas movies?
Same.
And after making it, I think probably what's going to stand out to more people is the types of movies that aren't on my list. So I want to go ahead and just get some of these out of the way.
Okay.
Christmas movies that aren't on my list. A Christmas Story.
Okay.
Movie that makes me glad I don't have cable anymore for the stupid
they do
24-hour-a-day cycle of repeat that movie.
Yeah.
It is.
Of all the movies to repeat.
It is not a movie worthy of that level of iconic status.
It's not. So, honestly, I don't mind the movie. I just don't need the 24-hour marathons. I think it's a movie that's weirdly like it's like the amount of people that like it has grown over the years. And I don't know. It's fine. I mean, I think parts of it are entertaining, but it's weird how beloved that movie has become.
Yeah, I'm to be fair, I'm with you. Like, there's some parts that are really funny.
Yeah.
Like most people, I can't look at a box with the word fragile on it and not say fragile. It must be Italian.
Yep.
The leg lamp is funny.
It is.
But I've seen it once, or I've seen it more than once, but seeing it once was like, I'm good.
Yeah.
There was a sequel like last year.
It came on like HBO Max or something, like a direct sequel with the original, like the kid is back, and I didn't see it. Yeah, I just couldn't make myself care.
Go ahead and file that under sequels that come out, decades later that no one cares about.
That's probably a whole other pod of talking about movies like that.
Yeah. So, right out of the gate, I know a lot of people that's like their favorite.
We've already lost. You've already angered people.
Yeah. Elf is not on my favorite Christmas movies list.
Yeah.
I'm going to put it right there with A Christmas Story in that, like, is there some funny stuff in Elf? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you could probably make a 5-minute YouTube video that contains all the good
funny
stuff
parts,
Elf, and there's nothing else in it. It literally it makes me think of like an NFL game. You hear those stats about NFL games that like there's only 11 minutes of actual play in an NFL game, and it's all the like set up between them. That's the way I feel about watching Elf.
Mm-hmm.
Like I watched an hour and a half movie, and I'm like, I watched all of that for the 5 funny moments in the movie.
So Elf has kind of won me over in spite of itself. Normally, it would have all the things that I just don't think are funny in a movie, but I don't know. I think it's a good use of Will Ferrell. I think maybe because it was earlier, like he did like he was big on SNL. He did Old School, and I think Elf followed pretty quickly after that. So I hadn't had time yet to be like, oh, Will Ferrell, now he's the wacky basketball player and he's the wacky, you know what I mean?
Right.
So I think that movie, I don't know. I'm not saying it's an all-timer or anything for me. It doesn't bother me. I don't mind it.
Yeah. So, you know what? I'm gonna look at straight into the camera for this one and just say, people, I will admit I'm probably the one who's wrong on that. 99% of people love Elf.
Yeah,
they're probably right.
I just think it's like, I was like, okay, this is pretty harmless. It's kind of sweet. Like Will Ferrell and is it Zooey Deschanel? Yeah. I think they're fine together. You know, like it's fine. Yeah. It's fine.
I always feel like when I'm watching it, James Caan is probably like, what am I doing in this movie?
I was in The Godfather, people. Yeah.
And I think, you know, maybe he was having a blast doing it. It's also, you know, he's playing the grumpy character. So, but it's just like, did he have to act, or is James Caan just reacting to actual?
They didn't even give him a script. Probably they were like, okay, you just filmed James Caan rolling his eyes at Will Ferrell. And I will say, is it James Caan's wife? Is it Mary Steenburgen? I think.
Yeah.
One of the worst performances I've ever seen in a movie. There is a scene towards the end of that movie where they're all singing and like wherever they are, and she is trying to sing. And she's doing this weird thing with her face. Every time that movie's on, I always tell Misty, my wife, I go, that's terrible acting. And she's like, I know, you say that every time this movie's on. It's awful. But it's got its charms.
Yeah. And you know, I think you brought up the end of the movie, and I think that's really kind of my problem with the movie is it is just sort of a series of sketches.
It is.
And the whole like last chunk of the movie, I'm like, okay, let's just get over with, because you're trying to push a plot along and have some sort of summarizing thing, and we've gotten past all the funny, and so
I get it. I don't think you're wrong. I'm not saying like, oh, Elf is great. I'm just saying like, you know what? Fine, I accept it. It's a good Christmas movie. I get a few laughs out of it. It's sweet, good enough for me.
All right.
Funny enough, too, directed by Jon Favreau.
Yes.
Yeah.
Elf. Jon Favreau of Iron Man fame. For those
also directed Elf. Yeah, it's funny.
It is. He has had an interesting career. We'll have to dive into sometime.
Oh, it's a wild career. Yeah,
varied to say the least.
Yeah.
You know, there's probably more, but I shouldn't sit here the whole time talking about Christmas movies.
Oh, I've definitely got some that I don't.
If you want to throw out some that are,
I'll be glad to. I'll just go and get my hot take over with. I think the Santa Claus is terrible.
Okay, I'm with you.
I do not like that movie at all. It does not hold up well at all. It's not funny. It's not entertaining. The kid is awful and annoying in it. The special effects look like a made-for-TV movie at best. I just don't like that movie or that series. And, of course, they had to make a Disney Plus series. Like, who wanted 3 of those plus a, 15 years later series?
Yeah.
I do not like the Santa Claus.
Yeah, I guess I can't get with you on the doesn't hold up just because I haven't seen it so long. I don't even know would it hold up or not. But
it's bad.
It just wasn't something I needed to go back and visit.
No, it's so 90s. It's like Tim Allen when he was at his height, you know, and because he had the Home Improvement, which was huge, and then that was a big movie that people like, and I just don't get it at all.
Yeah, I certainly don't get the sequels. That's for sure.
No.
I'll give it credit for this. Not justify a whole movie. It's meme worthy. It's just when he's getting fat, he tells the doctor, "A little weight. Does this look a little weight?"
Yeah.
Just because every man is at one point reenacted. Jiggling their belly and saying, "Does this look like a little weight?"
Absolutely.
I have.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I have. I could do so right now. I'd also just say the old what I consider the old classics, like It's a Wonderful Life or Miracle on 34th Street. I just don't have any connection to those movies. Yeah. And the point of this is not for us to be Scrooges, but we're just getting that out of the way. I'm not saying they're bad. I'm uninterested. They're old, they're dated, they're slow. They just don't mean a whole lot to me, and people do love those.
Yeah. I thought about bringing those up, and then I didn't, because neither one is going to be found anywhere on my list.
No, me neither. And I'm not anti-old movie at all. I love old movies, but those just don't resonate with me at all. Yeah. So, Merry Christmas, everybody. Here's all these movies that we hate.
So let's talk about some movies that we love.
Okay.
All right.
Let's get positive.
No less controversial, but positive. Right at the top of my list. Easy call for me. It's Die Hard. Die Hard is a Christmas movie, people.
Okay.
All right. I don't know if you know this, Andy, but Die Hard has been playing at the AMC in Champaign.
I do know this.
Last weekend, it was on the IMAX screen they have there.
Yeah.
I went and watched Die Hard.
We haven't talked enough lately.
I know.
I'm very jealous.
I got to tell you, great decision.
Let's talk Die Hard for a little bit.
Not that there was any question, but it holds up, and it on the big screen, it
looks great.
So much fun.
Yeah.
And I was just nothing about this. Yeah, there's not even a lot of 80s action movies cheesiness we've talked about before.
Cobra
it's almost unintentionally funny.
Yeah.
Parts it's everything about Die Hard. It's still perfect.
Yeah.
It's like going and looking at the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, and you're just yep, this was a masterpiece in its time and for all time.
That's so awesome that you got to go see that.
And while I was watching it, of course, why did they put it back in theaters right now?
Because it's a Christmas movie.
It's a Christmas movie. And as I was watching, I was like, how Christmassy is Die Hard? Christmas is such a key point of that story. It's littered throughout the movie.
They're at a Christmas party.
Yes.
Does the opening credits have a Christmas song, or the closing credits one I think plays Christmas music?
Closing credits for sure.
Yeah. Now I have a machine gun, ho ho ho, which leads to the amazing Alan Rickman line reading where he reads ho ho. I don't know what his voice is like.
It's the absolute best. And I was thinking about how if God rest his soul, Alan Rickman is no longer with us.
R.I.P.
If he was still alive, I would be going on one of those sites that you can pay celebrities create your voicemail or something to see if Alan Rickman's on there, because I would pay $200 for Alan Rickman to read for us to have it for an intro. Now I have a podcast. Ho ho ho!
Wouldn't that be? Oh my gosh!
I'd be delighted to no end. That would be my favorite thing ever.
The whole podcast would just be you and I smiling and laughing giddily.
Maybe I can find an Alan Rickman impersonator and get him.
We can hire him. We have a very small budget. We can give you very little, but will you please come do that?
We just need you, to say, now I have a podcast. Ho ho ho.
So it's definitively a Christmas movie.
Definitively.
Well, and then at the end, he wraps the gun. He uses some Christmas tape or wrapping stuff.
Yeah.
It's all throughout the movie.
Yeah, and even the music is all Christmassy throughout. And then you get the Ode to Joy, that deep.
You okay?
Yeah, my voice. I'm going through puberty. Apparently,
it happens.
Yes, this is what happens when you take a couple weeks off a podcast.
Yeah,
my voice is out of podcast.
Yeah, shape. It's like you got to exercise the muscles.
So Die Hard.
Die Hard. What a manly movie.
Ode to Joy.
Yeah.
And that deep cello when they it's
very Christmas-esque.
Very Christmassy and
my guy, the limo driver, Argyle, he's jamming to some Christmas music in the limo.
Yep.
Love that guy.
Yeah, so it just it wouldn't be the same movie. It wouldn't have the same feel if it wasn't Christmas.
And I wonder, I don't even really know why that is. It's just the combination of combining the action movie with the Christmas season, and that was kind of a new and fresh idea at the time. You didn't see that a lot. Lethal Weapon does it. Shane Black, every movie he does is set at Christmas. So Lethal Weapon kind of takes place during Christmas also, but doesn't quite have the focus on Christmas like Die Hard does.
Yeah. I think there's just something about taking that time of year, which is supposed to be magical and special and connected,
and then there's chaos and violence, and
there's even the moment of the FBI is going to turn off the power to the building, to make them sweat, which is part of Han's plan.
Yes,
he's a genius.
The incompetent FBI guys
and the construction guys I can't turn off the
power.
It's
Christmas
Eve. We can't kill the power for everybody. It's just if it wasn't Christmas time, what's he gonna say? Just okay, I'll kill the power. It just adds a layer of, this isn't what's supposed to be happening at this time of the year. It's so antithetical to what we normally associate it with. Yeah.
Die Hard is a Christmas movie.
It's a Christmas
movie, settled.
And
I agree.
And it's a great movie.
It's so good. Alan Rickman is so overqualified in that movie. It's insane. And Bruce Willis is phenomenal in that movie.
I know. And I was like, man, I know because you read about it when you read about movie stuff, how he was such a surprise choice for the movie at the time. People didn't think of him
because it was the Schwarzenegger and Stallone era,
right? And Schwarzenegger was even the original person they wanted. For
it just wouldn't have worked as good.
The schedule didn't work out, and it's one of those like, thank goodness.
Thank goodness. I love Schwarzenegger, but he wouldn't have worked.
It's a totally different movie. And watching it, I'm like, Willis is so perfect. It's got to be one of the all-time greatest casting like success stories.
Oh yeah,
that they took this guy that people like, Bruce Willis is an action star, and then you watch it and you're like, he's perfect. And it's like when he's doing the wisecracking and stuff, he's great at it. But yet you do believe him as an action. When he's literally rappelling off the top of this skyscraper with a fire hose, you're like, you know what? He probably could do that. Yeah,
he's a perfect balance.
He seems very tough.
He was willing. Like one thing he did that Schwarzenegger and Stallone and those guys never wanted to do. He's vulnerable in that movie. Like the glass scene is cringy and stuff, but he's not. He's in a lot of pain, and he's talking to the guy on the walkie-talkie, and he's like, look, if I don't make it through this, and it shows some vulnerability, and just what a great movie.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's like as everyone knows, John McClane is the everyman. The
everyman in the crazy situation.
But just I was even thinking about like the family drama dynamic of it. It's not like overly done in the movie, but it works really well. It makes it very human. And like you're talking about, Stallone and Schwarzenegger, as great as they are, they never have like great chemistry and like dramatic things with their romantic lead in the movie. But with him, it was like
you buy it.
It felt like a real couple with just real.
When they're arguing, it sounds like real human beings arguing. Right. In the conflict and then like I said, Willis is such a casting success, but so was Alan Rickman.
Oh yeah.
I think maybe that was his first movie.
I think it was. I think he was a theater actor up to that point.
Yeah. And he's still, to this day, it's talked about as like, he's, Mount Rushmore of greatest villains of all time. And I think that's deserved.
Absolutely. And, I'm actually like, I probably get blasted by the Harry Potter fans for this, but I hate that Alan Rickman doesn't have more iconic roles because...
It's like he was maybe he's like so selective because I don't think he did a lot, did he?
Right. I think he probably would go back to the stage very often.
Yeah, because it's like Die Hard. He's in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. Yeah. He's the bad guy in that, and he steals that show. He steals that movie too.
He's like, what I did in Die Hard was really awesome and fun, but I played it pretty serious. I'm going to go way over the top.
I'm going completely absurd. And then
he was in Galaxy Quest.
Yeah, that's right. And he's really funny in that movie. And then the Harry Potters, and I don't know that I could name you another Alan Rickman movie.
Yeah. I'm sure he did some like indie movies and stuff.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
And he died young, I think. I don't think he was, he wasn't old, right? Like 60s probably?
Yeah. But, last thing I'll say about Die Hard, I think. I'll probably end up referencing me.
This could just be a Die Hard episode.
It's so funny.
Yeah.
It's not funny at the expense of being awesome action.
Right.
They balance it all so well. Like the humor, Hans Gruber is so funny.
He is funny.
So funny in that.
And then your guy Ellis. He's just ridiculous and over the top over the top to the extreme and
yeah, and their interactions are hilarious.
That scene is amazing. And he props his feet up on the desk and they're just I'm your white knight.
Yeah. Ellis says something read something in Forbes and then does this whole pitch. And it's just like, I must have missed that issue of Forbes. Yeah. Like, I don't get what you're saying.
It's amazing. And then what's the Theo?
Yeah.
One of the bad guys he's entertaining in that movie. The Huey Lewis guy?
He is, yeah. Theo is the guy who is hamming it up for sure.
Oh, yeah. Is he the one that's like, 'twas the night before Christmas and all? Yeah. He's having a good time. Yeah. It's all right. I got some in my eye. All right. Technical difficulty there with my eye. So I'm so glad to hear you say like you got to see it and you think it holds up.
Oh man, it's perfect. It's one of those things. Like I watch it and I go, do I give Die Hard enough consideration in like my favorite all time movies? Like say favorite action movie, and I'm like, yeah, it's right up there. But it just might be one of my favorite all-time movies. It's
awesome.
It just never fails to entertain.
No, I'm so glad to hear that. Also, too, so interesting how it's taken on this whole new life of people debating whether it's a Christmas movie or not. Mm-hmm. And you get some heated debates going on. I've read stuff online before where it's like people really are passionate about this.
Yeah. And to you people that want to say it's not a Christmas movie because you're like, oh, it's just an action movie that happens to take place at Christmas.
That's the argument.
Almost every movie is a movie about something else
that just happens to take place during Christmas. Yes.
I'm sorry. Yes. Maybe a movie that is focused on an elf is more Christmassy.
Right.
But like most movies, again, that are Christmas movies are about something else and just happen to be at Christmas.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is. This just happens to be hostage situation at Christmas.
I agree. So, moral of the story, Die Hard rules.
Die Hard rules.
It does.
Yeah.
I'm so jealous you got to see that in the theater.
All right. We went on a bit for that one.
I knew we would, though.
I knew we would.
I think it was like we just knew that was going to happen.
Do you want to tell me one of your favorite Christmas movies?
So, I mean, Die Hard is totally on my list. A movie that I really like, which is really funny, because I really don't like the main actor at all, and I really don't care for any of the people outside of this movie. I really do like Christmas Vacation. National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. Yeah. I actually just watched it last night or 2 nights ago. And I think it holds up really well. I do not like Chevy Chase at all. Yeah. I don't think he's funny. I don't connect at all with his sense of humor. I don't think Fletch is funny. I'm not really a Caddyshack guy, which I know to some people is blasphemy. But in this movie, I guess kind of like Elf, where it's like, to me, Will Ferrell can be hit or miss. I like Will Ferrell more than I like Chevy Chase. But like Christmas Vacation is the perfect use of Chevy Chase, I think. And I think that movie is really funny. I like how it just, like, the whole point is, like, he's just the ultimate family man, and he just wants so hard, he wants so badly to have the perfect Christmas, and everything that could possibly go wrong does. And I actually think it's a really well, like, structured movie, how it just, one thing goes wrong, and then another thing goes wrong, and it just builds and builds and builds until finally everything is a disaster. And, you know, of course, Randy Quaid is iconic, his cousin Eddie, everyone knows that. He's so funny. It's too bad he's such a weird guy in real life, but I do think that's a movie that holds up really well, is genuinely funny, and like we've talked about in the past, comedy is definitely my least favorite genre of movie, but this one I do think is legitimately a funny movie.
Yeah, I think there's two like versions of Chevy Chase. There's the really like wisecracking, he is the smartest guy in the room version of Chevy Chase.
And I'm gonna remind you of that.
That's the Fletch.
Yes.
And I actually like Fletch, but and then there's the like, I'm the biggest
I'm the buffoon,
which is kind of like the later Vacation movie,
but like a good-hearted buffoon.
I feel like Christmas Vacation is one of the few movies where he like toes the line between the two.
Yeah, like that's what I'm saying. It's like the best use of him.
Yeah, he's kind of a bumbling idiot at moments, but he's not like always over the top with that. And then he's like kind of funny and snarky sometimes too.
Like when he's talking to the neighbors and stuff, he pulls out some of that Fletch like sarcasm and
his work thing in the beginning of the movie. The guys are walking by and he's just like,
Merry Christmas, Merry Christmas. Yeah. And he has some choice words. And
exactly.
And it's like, I think for a comedy to be successful and to resonate with me, there has to be something in it that rings true, even if it's ridiculous. And the whole idea of like, he just wants the perfect Christmas for his family. And he just wants his kids to be happy, and he wants his lights, and like you can identify with that, even if it's ridiculous. So to me, that I automatically just have more of a connection to that than I do, some just screwball comedy. So I do like Christmas Vacation. I do think it holds up well.
That's a good choice. It is on my list.
I figured. I mean, that is not an original idea on my part. Everybody likes Christmas Vacation. But
I wondered in my mind when we started talking about popular Christmas movies that we don't like, how many people were bracing themselves for us to say Christmas Vacation.
Nope, I do like that one. I do like that.
So we're good with that one. People don't hate us.
Nope.
All right, I will share another one. This one is actually a more recent movie.
Oh.
It is very much a Christmas movie, and probably I'm a total hypocrite because it's almost like a more modern version of A Christmas Story. It's a movie called 8-Bit Christmas.
Okay.
Yeah. That was on HBO. Yep. It came out 2 years ago, I think. And it's a kid telling... it's one of those classic, like, we start in present day, and it's a dad played by Doogie Howser. Neil Patrick Harris. And he's telling his daughter about his first Nintendo that he got for Christmas.
And trying to
flashback to like...
It's a really fun movie.
And I think maybe the reason that it connected with me way more than even like Christmas Story is he's telling a story about growing up in the time that I grew up.
Yes.
And there's so many.
So automatically you're connected
like,
to
things
it.
that you're like, oh my gosh, that's so true, so funny. There's a great bit about the one kid in the neighborhood who had a Nintendo, and like he lets just a few kids come over. They all want to get in his house to do it, and he gets a glove, and they're all like blown away by the Nintendo glove.
Yep. Which was, it's a real thing. Yes, they took real things and
like this great moment of comedy when he's like, they're playing and the kid's using it, and he's like, and then like we all had this epiphany. The glove sucked.
Yeah.
It's like, yes,
it did. It was terrible.
It's a real thing that happened. Everybody thought it was the most incredible thing.
It was called the power. It was the ultimate letdown, and it was like one of those things where it was like nobody really wanted to admit it. Like if you were with a group of friends, like it's really cool. Right? And then like finally someone's like, look, this thing is terrible. And everyone else is like, I've been wanting to say that. You know what I mean? Like it's one of those things.
Yeah. So just lots of great nostalgia for somebody that's our age.
It's a really charming movie.
Charming. It's like a lot of great jokes. I mean, it's like I was saying about, Elf or something like that, where I'm like, you could take all the funny moments and put them together in a 5-minute YouTube clip.
It maintains.
Like this one, it maintains throughout. Like the jokes keep hitting. There's probably not any line that's as iconic as "You Sit on a Throne of Lies" from Elf, but even though it's not iconic, we were saying, it's more consistent. It's got great humor throughout.
And I'm glad you're talking about it because I don't know if it just kind of came and went quiet because it went straight to streaming.
I think that's what it is. I think it went right.
I just don't know anyone I've never heard a conversation about it. And it's like, oh, this is a real, and like you said, for people of a certain age, it's perfect and it taps into stuff that, like you said, the nostalgia, and you're like, yes, this is what it was like, and it's like realistic almost, and it's portrayal of wanting to get this Nintendo and everything.
Things that you really can't do today, but because they're kind of making fun of the different time, and of course it's got an extra layer that Neil Patrick Harris is telling the story, but when he was a kid, his mom bought him girl boots.
Yeah.
They're purple boots. That's what makes them girl boots.
Yes.
And he couldn't be seen in the purple boots because everyone's going to make fun of him.
And it's all that stuff where it's
that was what was from that time.
There's some truth in all of this. Yep. It's a really good movie. You should check it out if you haven't seen it, which I don't feel like a lot of people have.
Yeah, so I always like to recommend it to people who are
absolutely. I'm glad you brought it up.
What's a good family movie?
Yeah,
it's very family friendly.
It's clean, yeah.
It's, what's an underseen good Christmas movie? And I'm like, 8-Bit Christmas. If you've got HBO Max, check it out.
Yeah.
I think you'll
totally worth it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to bounce back and forth?
Yeah, let's go ahead.
So I feel like I'm coming in with the most obvious ones, but I'm going to go Home Alone.
Okay.
Another one that I do think holds up really well. And if you're, I saw Home Alone in the theater. I was 10 when it came out. It was a phenomenon. And if you weren't there, it's hard to describe what a cool idea this was, where it was this kid, it's obviously in the title, and the trailer, I do remember it. It's it made it very clear, people try to break into his house and he sets traps. I'm telling you, take my money, give me a front row seat, I am there. At 10 years old, it's yes, I will watch this movie, of course. And everyone did. It became a phenomenon.
Yeah, it's one of those movies that you're do they have children consultants on the movie? Because this is every child's dream.
Yeah.
Home Alone, get to do whatever I want. And then when burglars break in, I'm the mastermind.
It almost combined. Yeah, it's number one, I even remember as a kid, I liked all the stuff before the traps and stuff. It's he gets to go grocery shopping by himself. He's eating ice cream in bed. They really hit all the big, he's jumping on the bed. He's watching the gangster movies. And it was they really, it's you don't think of Home Alone and a great screenplay, I don't think, but it's they really were smart in how they hit all those notes of he's doing laundry by you just want it at that age, you want to feel independent.
Yeah.
And it's you want to show I don't need my parents, I can do this. And then with all the traps and stuff kick in, you're that's awesome too. And then in the meantime, Joe Pesci and Daniel Stern I still think they hold up as really funny.
Yeah.
They're over the top and they're buffoons and stuff, but it works.
Yeah. Well, and the older you get and the more you know about Joe Pesci's filmography, the funnier the idea that he was the bad guy in Home Alone gets.
Yeah.
And the fact that he couldn't cuss, so he just mumbles
yeah,
gibberish,
but it works. Like he's really good in that movie.
Like when you're a kid, it's funny because he's mumbling gibberish and he's just like, oh, that guy's funny, just you know. And then when you're an adult, you're like, oh, that's what he's doing because he can't do what Joe Pesci would do, which is say a bunch of curse words.
Which I do think I remember either like reading probably on IMDb where it's like he definitely let a lot of cussing slip, and he'd be like, oh, sorry, you know, it was one of those things.
Sure.
But I just think, like, again, this is not a hot take. Everyone loves Home Alone. Everyone puts it on the Mount Rushmore. But I think it's deserved. I think it holds up. It was a great idea. And, of course, they, you know, just made, like, 4 awful sequels and ruined it all. And not ruined it, but, I mean, they just can't leave stuff alone.
No.
Which drives me crazy. And then a couple years ago, they brought out, like, a Home Alone, like, reboot on Disney+. Easily one of the worst movies I've ever seen.
I did not.
Just an embarrassment.
Yeah. I didn't even bother watching it because I heard.
Oh, it's awful, and it's got Ellie Kemper in it, who's on The Office, who's a really funny, talented person, and you just feel awful for her because she's just trapped in this embarrassment of a movie. But anyway, Home Alone still holds up in my opinion.
All right, so you know, like any of the sequels, not even a fan of Home Alone 2.
No, I mean it. Like, look, if it's on, I'll watch it. I'll probably chuckle a little bit. But you just go, man, you so quickly just rehashed. You know, then that's just a general gripe of mine with Hollywood, where they're just so quick to rehash what they just did. Where in the meantime, there's some talented filmmaker out there struggling to get their movie off the ground, and they just redo Home Alone and call it Home Alone 2.
Yeah. I think you're probably right. Like, it probably would have been fine for it not to exist because everything that's good about it was pretty much in Home Alone 1. Yeah. But, you know, there's some things that are great about it. It's got Tim Curry in it.
It does. Tim Curry's always a win. We talked about that. We talked about Clue once. That's always a win.
That's true. And then what I always think of with Home Alone 2 is it's got one of the most profound conversations in the most random of settings, being in Home Alone 2 when Macaulay Culkin's character, Kevin, is talking to the weird homeless bird lady.
The bird lady, yeah.
And he gives her this metaphor or analogy of these roller skates that he got when he was a kid and how he was so worried about messing up his roller skates or scratching or anything that he would never take them out, and then he outgrew them and never got to use his roller skates. Mm-hmm. And it was a whole metaphor for her, like, shutting off from people and not using her heart. And I'm like, that is wildly profound for this stupid kids movie sequel. Like, but it, like, that one's always stuck with me. And I'm like, what a weird movie for that to be in.
Right. And I guess I shouldn't make it seem like I think Home Alone 2 is terrible. I just find it more unnecessary than anything. Yeah. And one last thing, I do like to point out with Home Alone, Joe Pesci, Home Alone came out in 1990. So I checked before I came over here. In September of 1990, Goodfellas comes out. Pesci's in it. Iconic, wins an Oscar for it. In November of 1990, Home Alone comes out. So he had Goodfellas and Home Alone within like a 2 or 3 month period. Like, what a 1-2 combination. Yeah. So kudos to Joe Pesci. What a 1990 he had.
Yeah. Man, it was 80s and 90s again. Just talking about what a different time it was. Like, I can't imagine in 2023 someone like Joe Pesci becoming one of the biggest stars in the world. But he was one of the biggest stars in the world.
He had that little run there where it's like, this is unreal. Yeah. It's like Lethal Weapon 2, Home Alone, Goodfellas. He pops up in JFK, which is one of the weirdest movies of all time.
My Cousin
Vinny, which is an all-time like overachieving movie. Like, this movie should not be this good, and it is.
Yes.
Casino, like, he was on a roll. Yeah. And then he's just like, all right, see ya. I'm going to go golf for 25 years, and I'll come back and be in The Irishman.
Right. Oh, man. All right, I've got 2 that I kind of put together, but so it's probably a cheat. They were like my 4/5. And I was like, they probably are the length of a regular movie if you put them together, so I think it's fair. Mm-hmm. So the animated How the Grinch Stole Christmas.
On my list also.
And Charlie Brown Christmas.
Okay.
I think that's 2 cartoon classics that, like I said, you probably put them together and they equal like a normal movie length. So I couldn't really pick between the 2 of them. I only want to watch the cartoon Grinch. I don't really care about the Jim Carrey Grinch. I don't care about whatever new animated one came out a couple of years ago. I watched it. however long it is, 30-minute cartoon.
It's like 35, 40 minutes. Perfect length. As we found out when they did the Jim Carrey Grinch, where they're just desperately trying to stretch it out to a full-length movie. And it's so obnoxious.
Yeah.
I mean, kudos to Jim Carrey. He's all in. He's committed. He's good as the Grinch. But you try and watch that, and it's just so obvious. We're like, all right, we need something that takes up 10 minutes. And it's annoying. The cartoon is great. It's charming. It's sweet. It's really good. It's the perfect length.
Yep. Great music.
Yeah.
The
really
iconic Grinch song.
Absolutely.
The thing I always remember about the Jim Carrey Grinch, though, like one of those things where a behind-the-scenes story is more memorable to me than the movie itself, but that's Jim Carrey wore these yellow contacts that he said were like really big and really like a pain, and like he hated wearing the contacts.
Uh-huh.
And he asked, I think Ron Howard directed it.
Ron Howard directed
it. Could we just like CGI this something? And Ron's like, no, it wouldn't look as good. You'd tell. And so he did the contacts for the whole movie. Well, they had to come back for some reshoots, and they had to use CGI for the reshoots for whatever reason. And after they did the CGI, Ron was like, yeah, I guess that would have worked just fine. And Jim's like, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah, I think you can find like a lot of interviews with Jim Carrey where he talks about how they were physically painful to him to have those contacts in. But that's a movie I just go, why does this movie exist? Yeah. It just seems like just so much money just thrown at the screen and you get so little from it.
Yeah. And then, although, man, I'll say this. You learn things working out of school that you wouldn't expect. Like, a lot of kids still love the Jim Carrey Grinch. Yeah. I'm like, so I think, it's, I guess the target demographic was little kids.
It probably was.
People who watch as a little kid love it, and we were probably just too old when it came
probably.
out.
And it's like I'm not against the idea of trying to make a live action version of it, but who says it has to be 2 hours long? Make it an hour and 20 minutes. Like, keep it moving. It's just they draw it out, and there's this really weird part in that movie where I don't remember exactly what happens, but there's this big explosion. Like some little car drives into something, and it's like they so clearly just needed like 5 more minutes or 10 more minutes, and it's like, why did you even put this scene in the movie? And yeah. But the cartoon I think is great.
Yeah. And then Charlie Brown Christmas is just,
it's iconic.
It's a nice little like sweet story.
It's harmless. It's a good story.
Great little like pitiful Christmas tree. Puts the tree topper on it, just like wilts over.
I mean, people will still say that. Like, I have a Charlie Brown Christmas tree.
And Charlie Brown's just the ultimate lovable little loser. Like,
absolutely, it's hard not to root for Charlie Brown.
So that's one that like of all the old. I was thinking all the old animated stuff. Or even including like Rudolph and Frost.
And I still think that stuff has got its
fine.
They're fine.
If I'm going to pick any of them, it's going to be the Grinch. It's going to be Charlie Brown.
I would too. But like the Rudolph and the Frosty stuff, like they're fine because they, like I said, they keep moving. You're not sitting there going, "Come on, what are we dragging this out for?" They keep moving.
They're
and
not overly long.
They're not overly long, so they don't bother me.
Yeah. All right, you got another one?
So this is really just to amuse myself. I always kid that Rocky IV is a Christmas movie because Rocky and Drago fight on Christmas, either Christmas Eve or Christmas Day. I think it's Christmas Day in Russia. And so I just always tease that Rocky IV is a Christmas movie, which, I wouldn't argue with anyone that was like, dude, it's not a Christmas movie. I kind of just say it to annoy my wife and amuse myself. And so, but I'm going to throw it on the list. Rocky IV. We can say whatever we want on here.
You know what? I fully support it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I'm always just looking for an excuse to talk about Rocky IV, which we've talked about is, probably top 5 most ridiculous movies of all time. Mm-hmm. It's like 45% montage of previous movies, and then there's like he's driving in that one scene, and it's like a montage of his previous montages. It's just absurd. It's ridiculous. He ends the Cold War just through his boxing. Like, it is ridiculous. But I mean, come on, Rocky IV is. Yeah. Never has a movie been more entertaining and more ridiculous at the same time.
Which I think is really what the Christmas season's all about. The commercialized Christmas season.
See, maybe Stallone was
presents, all that stuff. He's like, What is it other than like cheesy wonderfulness?
Yeah, and that's what Rocky IV is. I mean, the most ridiculous cheesy wonderfulness you'll ever see in your life.
Rocky IV it's hot cocoa by a fireplace.
It is.
It
is. While Rocky scales a 12,000-foot mountain.
Yes.
And
just to scream Drago.
And then like I always joke where it's like the should be a deleted scene where it's or an alternate ending where it's like the fight never happens because he just dies on the top of the mountain. Like he climbs up there and he's like, "Whoa, this is really high," and I just have a jacket on.
It's a pretty steep incline and decline too. So I just like to imagine he turned around and looked around, just like and just had to like sit down and like kind of slide down. Like a little bit.
Like, Rocky, where have you been? Like, I accidentally climbed to the top of this mountain.
Got frostbite on my butt sliding down.
Yeah. So it's absurd, and I really, like I said, Christmas doesn't have a whole lot to do with the movie. Yeah. I just say it to amuse myself and to talk about Rocky IV.
Yeah. Well, this one people may say is a stretch as well.
Okay, good.
It's another one.
It's not just me then.
Is at Christmas time, and I think Christmas pops up several times throughout the movie. It's a comedy called Just Friends.
Yeah.
Starring Ryan Reynolds and Amy Smart.
Amy Smart, yep.
It's the classic story of a boy who's large and overweight and in love with his best friend who's a girl in high school, and then gets embarrassed when she finds out that he was in love with her and just is like, I love you as a friend.
Yeah.
Runs off, becomes successful, and loses all the weight and attractive, and then he ends up back in hometown at Christmas time.
Yeah, it's a good movie.
And yeah.
It is like the beginning of like we're going to make Ryan Reynolds a thing because he's just so charming and funny, and it's like we're just going to keep making Ryan Reynolds movies until one sticks and lands.
Yeah. And it's got a great supporting role from, is it Anna Faris or Anna Faris? Anna Faris.
Either one, yeah, whatever.
Where she's basically spoofing every female pop star.
Yep.
And she's
really funny.
Psycho in the movie. She writes this terrible song called Forgiveness.
Yep.
Me and my friends sing to each other all the time.
Yep. She's really good in that movie.
Yeah, and it's just a delight. But again, Christmas is a kind of key part because he's home right at the holidays, so they're always doing Christmassy things. There's carolers. There's one of the plot points is Amy Smart's dad's house is like the best decorated house in town with all the Christmas stuff.
Yep.
And so there's a lot of little Christmas goodies in there, and I think again, why is it important that it's Christmas? Because for a movie about like coming home always feels more homely at Christmas.
Yeah. It's one of those really good. It's a good example of like not all movies need to be The Godfather. Like not all movies need to be a 4-star masterpiece. Like there's something to be said about just a fun, charming movie with likable characters in it. Yeah. And that I think that definitely qualifies.
Yeah. Great humor about, again, like for those of you who haven't seen it, the whole plot is like he's turned himself into this big shot, successful, great guy who now like could totally get the girl, but when he goes back and he starts trying, everything goes wrong.
Everything goes wrong.
He just becomes the bumbling idiot again. Yeah. And it's
a fun movie.
Some great humor goes throughout that.
Yeah.
You got another one?
I do. I've got another one. I'm going to put White Christmas on here. Okay. You may judge me. You may think less of me as your podcast partner.
I do.
That's fine. I knew that might be a possibility. It is my wife's favorite movie. So I've watched it many times. And at first it was like, yeah, honey, I'll watch this movie with you. It's grown on me. It's a really old, it's like 1952, 54, something like that. It's Bing Crosby. So, while it's not one of my favorite movies, I do think it kind of is an important piece of the Christmas movie puzzle. Bing Crosby and that old, it's basically I don't want to say it's a musical. Not a musical like we think of now where people just randomly burst out into choreographed dance and stuff. But it's like, that's their act. It's Bing Crosby and I think Danny Kaye. And they're kind of like an act and they're partners. And it's like, it's in Vermont and it snows and I don't know. It's won me over the years of watching it with Misty. And we went to the theater to see it. And I think it has a nice little charm to it. So I don't really know what else to say about it. I don't have a lot of White Christmas like discussion in my brain. Yeah. But it's a good movie.
So here's my my honest feedback is I've actually never seen it. So
okay, that's fine.
I can't judge you.
Your honest feedback is like you're a disgrace. You're letting your wife dictate which movies you like.
Because I've never watched that one. It probably comes down to one is older movie, so it's not that big a surprise. I guess I haven't seen it. It wasn't like any of my my family's favorite movie. They're like, you got to watch this when I was a
right.
kid.
I honestly, until she started telling me about it when we got married, I never heard of it.
And because I'm not a big Christmas movie guy, I was never like, oh, I need to go watch these Christmas classics that I haven't watched. Of course, people might say, well, if you watch those, you'd be more into Christmas classics, but
yeah, fair enough. Right.
Who's to say?
Right.
Who's to say? They're just usually overly sentimental, like a Hallmark movie, and that's what usually
it's almost like if the kids would say it's like the OG Hallmark movie, like 30 or 40 years ahead of its time, because it's sappy and everything, of course, works out perfectly, and they want it to snow, so it starts snowing right on cue. But it's like it's a lot of song and dance, which is not really my cup of tea. But you do watch it, and you're like, because it's an old movie, it's like, and they were legitimately doing this. There's no CGI and wires and green screen, or let's remove the wires or anything. Like, it's talented people, so I can appreciate it for that. Yeah. And look, if you're a movie guy, Jeremy, sometimes I spend a lot of times telling Misty that she should appreciate Rocky 3 for what it is and stuff. So you got to give back sometimes.
That's totally fair. I mean, I don't have to get back to anybody.
You don't. You're free of this burden, but I have to, because of all the times I've tried to explain to her why Terminator 2 is actually a masterpiece, while she just plays the part of good wife and listens. I, in turn, have been patient and watched White Christmas several times, and it has grown on me. I will admit that.
Well, that's a success story.
It is a success. It's a win.
One movie that I wrote on here that I was like, I don't know if it's fair to go ahead and put it on there because it might be recency bias. I don't want to talk about it a lot because we talked about it on a recent podcast. Is The Holdovers, because it's a Christmas movie. Yeah. The whole premise is, as we talked about before, when we talked about the movie, is these kids at a boarding school who have to stay over Christmas break because they don't have anywhere to go, and so it's Paul Giamatti and this other kid, for the most part, during Christmas having to spend it together. This unlikely pairing, and so it's don't need to rehash it since we just talked about it recently on a podcast. But
you did like it.
It's a Christmas movie that I really liked, and I foresee
becoming
that when people ask for favorite Christmas movies, I might be able to reference it and be like,
nice.
Nice. Right after Die Hard. So people are like, Die Hard's not a Christmas movie. Well, what about The Holdovers? And they'll be like, well, we don't think about that as a Christmas movie either. I'll be like, that is definitely a Christmas movie.
Right.
Very central to the plot is Christmas.
Die Hard and The Holdovers. Yeah. Just two completely different movies in every way possible. Yeah. So I don't really have a lot more, but I do want to shout out just a genre of Christmas movies. Okay. If you're into this stuff, there is I guess it's not a new thing, but there's also some like good Christmas like horror movies or like Christmas action, which Die Hard is, but like if you're into this stuff, like the OG like Black Christmas came out in the 70s. Yeah. Really creepy, atmospheric. It's not like gory necessarily, but it's a good movie if you're into that. If you're into bad horror movies, there's Silent Night, Deadly Night that came out in the 80s, which is awful, but is definitely like it will check that box if you're looking for like kind of like that like low budget, almost like sleazy, just grimy horror movie. That's a thing. And then somewhat recently, like within the last year or two, I think 2 years maybe, Violent Night with David Harbour from Stranger Things. It's really fun.
Yeah, it is a strange, goofy, weird.
It's weird. It is, but like, and I'm not saying like it's an all-timer, but like I just wanted to shout those out. If you don't like just the sappiness of the Christmas movies, there does exist movies, horror, violence, action that exists. So check some of those out if you're into that.
Yeah. There's romance Christmas movies. I believe Love Actually is a Christmas movie, isn't it?
The Holiday is
a Christmas. The Holiday is what cracks me with The Holiday. Again, talk about a thing associated with the movie that I remember more in the movie is there's this clip of this reporter, like a red carpet event or something, asking Jack Black, "What's your favorite Christmas movie?" And and he answers honestly, whatever, earnestly, some other movie. And she's like, "I figured you'd pick your Christmas movie," and he's like, "Did I do a Christmas?"
Yeah.
The Holiday, right? Like, the Holiday. And I was like, and that's kind of where I am with that too. Like, I remember that movie actually being good though. I remember liking The Holiday.
It is. Like Kate Winslet and Jack Black are really charming together. I've said charming like 12 times on this. I never use that word. What is wrong with me? They're really good together. It's not like my cup of tea necessarily, but I'm like, okay, like a strange pairing of Kate Winslet and Jack Black, but it works. Like they really are good together.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it once and I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's fine.
Like you said, like again, but
like Love Actually. I think a lot of those. There's another. I think About a Boy. I think with Hugh Grant. I think that's kind of taking place during Christmas. And those are movies like they may be good, they may not be good, but they just I just don't have any connection to them.
Yeah.
And then there's just like I had way more. I actually didn't even write them down, but it's like way more misses than like Fred Claus, Four Christmases, Christmas with the Cranks. A bunch of these movies came to mind. I was like, I do not like these movies.
Another movie I didn't mention that's really popular that I don't like is Polar Express.
Oh, that is weird. And I know like I'm kind of stealing this from the internet where people like post a clip and it's like this movie is creepy, and they're right, it is. I don't like it.
Yeah, not a Polar Express fan.
I've tried to watch it like 3 times. I've actually never gotten through it because I'm just like I don't like this movie. Yeah, and I remember like several years ago they did like an anime. I think it was Robert Zemeckis again did like a Christmas Carol in like that weird like what is it? It's not CGI. The same way that Polar Express is done.
I think it's made to be like 3D.
Yeah, and he did that with Jim Carrey. I didn't like that. So,
But, while we're on the topic, there are some enjoyable Scrooge movies. The Scrooge movie with the Muppets and Michael Caine, which is
a Muppets Christmas Carol, I think it's called. It's fun.
Which is fun. There's Bill Murray's Scrooged.
Okay. So I actually just watched that the other night. Everyone is like upstairs, like the kids were upstairs doing their thing. I think Misty fell asleep early, and I was like, I turned that on. That's a weird movie. It's really weird. And I was like, I don't know if I like this or don't like it. It's odd.
Yeah, it's a good place to land, I think, on it. It's
just odd, yeah. And at the end, like the last like 5 minutes, you could tell they're like, all right, Bill Murray, just go do Bill Murray things. Like he's kind of like talking into the camera, and it's just
like we got to wrap this up. Just do something.
Just be Bill Murray for like 5 minutes.
Yeah. But kind of going back to the action genre that you're talking about, I went and saw the movie Silent Night.
Oh yeah,
which is a recent John Woo movie.
John Woo movie, yeah.
I was like, it's John Woo. Yeah, I hadn't seen a John Woo movie in forever, and I've just got to sadly report, it is a
thumbs down.
It's a bad movie.
Was it bad?
And
what happened? It just didn't. It just didn't land.
Yeah, it just didn't land. I think there's like, not surprisingly, very little plot.
Oh yeah.
Takes a little too long to get to the action with no plot. And then the action, I literally had the thought, John Woo, you cannot put out a movie like this in the age of John Wick. It's embarrassing that this is your action in the age of John Wick, because John Wick action is so much better. Like a John Wick movie came out this year.
Yeah.
And like, if somebody watched that and then watched Silent Night, they'd be like, this is an embarrassing
second rate
at action.
That's funny. I just read an article the other day. It was talking about John Wick, and they included Mission Impossible too. I was like, they've set the bar so high. If you're going to do an action movie, you've got to, like they have set the bar high. And I thought it was a really fair point.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
You're right. The Mission Impossible movies as well. Like, I mean, John Woo is an action legend. Like he did great things in the 90s and stuff, but it just... Including
one of the all-time weirdest movies to ever exist, Face Off.
Yes.
Which we should watch sometime and then just do a podcast about it. One of the weirdest movies, 2 of the weirdest performances ever in history from Cage and Travolta.
Yes. Before like they were full Cage and Travolta parodies of themselves, it was like all the clues were right there in that movie.
It was right there, and we just didn't notice. Like, we didn't heed the warnings.
Yeah. But and the other thing about Silent Night is you think, like, oh, this is a Christmas-themed action movie. It's called Silent Night. Like, he's got a very Christmassy, like, sweater on in the poster, and he starts the movie. But that's very incidental to the plot. I mean, more so than even Die Hard. Like, I didn't even think about it being... It's called Silent Night because in the beginning of the movie... it all starts off with a drive-by, or not even drive-by, like 2 gang cars going by, shooting at each other, and then innocent people getting hit. He ends up getting shot in the throat and can't speak.
Gotcha.
So
So it's way more. It's a gimmick.
The entire movie, and that's the Silent Night thing, is that he doesn't speak. So but then again, like there's literally like nothing Christmassy about it other than the incident happens on Christmas, and then it's like he marks the next Christmas as the day for his revenge, and like trains basically for a year to get his revenge. and that year you feel it because it's like an hour of movie.
That's too bad that it didn't land because I was like, okay, cool, a John Woo action movie.
Yeah.
I want action movies to exist and succeed.
And I feel like the guy who's the lead in it, Joel Kinnaman.
Yeah,
he is. The poor guy, I think he's actually a pretty good.
He's always
actor,
picking,
and it's like
because he's like Suicide Squad,
he can't find his good.
Can't find the
role.
part. Yeah.
I think the closest is there was the Amazon Prime series Hannah, girl who's like trained, and he plays her dad in it, and he was only in the first season. Was really good in that.
Yeah,
and then
that happens though, where some people just never find their part, even though you can tell they're good.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe one day it will happen for them.
Maybe it will. I was just looking. I don't mean to interrupt you. I did forget to shout out Gremlins.
Okay.
It has a Christmas, it takes place at Christmas. It's the snowy small town, and yet another movie I think that holds up really well.
Yeah.
I don't have a ton to say about it, but it's like, yeah, Gremlins. I wouldn't argue with anybody if they wanted to call Gremlins a Christmas movie.
I mean, at this point, people are probably like, Jeremy, what would you argue?
I know. I was like, we're probably being way too loose with our definition of a Christmas movie, but you know what? I don't. Yeah. Give me Gremlins though over like stuff that is specifically made, like I said, like Fred Claus or something, which is like, this movie is just awful. Come on.
Fred Claus is good for one reason only.
The Parks and Rec joke?
John Ralphio reference.
Maybe the funniest joke ever written. Should we try to explain it, or will we just butcher it?
We'd probably just butcher it.
Check it out, because I legitimately think it's one of the most clever, well-delivered jokes in TV history. And I'll just leave it at that, because it's really tempting for me to try and reenact the joke, and I'll just fail. Yeah. Shout out to John Ralphio, one of the all-time great supporting characters in the show.
Did you see the movie Spirited that Ryan Reynolds and Will Ferrell did like a year ago? It was an Apple TV movie.
So I started to watch it, and I was just not into it. Yeah. Maybe, I don't know, and it may have been my fault. I don't remember. I think it was like a one night after a basketball game, and I was tired, and I was just trying to wind down, and I turned it on, and I was just like, you know what, I'm tired. So I've seen some of it. It's probably not fair of me to comment on it, because I don't think I was. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes you just have to be ready to watch a movie, and I wasn't.
Yeah, it's definitely one I think if you're not in the right place to be like, I'm going to watch a Ryan Reynolds, Will Ferrell, like as it is them doing their shtick.
Right. And
Christmas musical comedy.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, this is what I'll say. Like, I watched it, I think, in the right mood.
That was
pleasant enough, and I remember barely anything about it. Mm-hmm. It's just one of those. It's like, it was very throwaway, like... And that's a thing that happened.
So I'm sure one of these days we'll probably do an entire pod about like the streaming era. That is one of my biggest complaints about the streaming era, is that these movies with huge stars in it can come and go, and you just forget about it completely.
Yeah,
that's such a pet peeve of mine. Where it's like, because I grew up in that era where it's like, movie theater, of course, streaming obviously wasn't a thing. So like everything was marketed as like, this is a big deal. Now some, of course, movies bombed and they didn't land, but like. You never would have had like a Will Ferrell, Ryan Reynolds movie just come and go. And I've never heard one person talk about that movie. And that really bums me out. Not specific to that movie, but I just don't like it that we live in this world where, it's like Denzel Washington and, Steve Carell. And it's like, the movie's just like, what? I didn't even know that was a movie. And it's like, that should be a big deal. That didn't actually happen. It'd be
amazing if it did, though.
It would
should have just said it did. People would have believed it.
They would have believed that's
what streaming service was that?
And that kind of goes to my point, where it's like you could tell someone like, "Hey, did you know on Peacock or whatever streaming service that like Anthony Hopkins and Julia Roberts did a movie together?" And they'd be like, "Oh, I'm sure they probably did." But that's a total tangent on my part. I don't like that.
Yeah. Well, we're coming up on Christmas. It's like 8 days from now.
Yeah, a week from today is Christmas Eve.
Yeah, so no podcast next week. I know after a couple of weeks off, I'll be in Tennessee. I'm sure you'll have family stuff going on Christmas Eve.
Mm-hmm.
We'll be back maybe the week after that.
So, give an insight to our personal lives. I was just telling you, I'm getting ready to start I have like a 3-week vacation. Maybe we can squeeze in like a Tuesday night pod or something.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, like, I don't want to give too much away, but it definitely feels like we need to do, like, a top 5 of the year.
That's what I was going to say. I think that will probably be the theme of our next one. kind of a year in review wrap up where we give our top 5 of the year.
But I will say we can hopefully use that time to maybe squeeze in a few movies that we talked before we started recording. I want to see Ferrari. I want to see Poor Things. I want to see, what else did I say?
You said those two. I added Zone of Interest.
Yes, I said something else. Anyway,
yeah.
So
a few things.
It'll be a little bit of a break, but hopefully for good because Godzilla -1.
Yes.
So I want to try and squeeze in some movies because I want to have, with kids and sports and work, I'm not going to see every movie, but I want to see as many as I can to make my list. So
yeah, I think. That'll be fun. I'm really looking forward to that. I think I've mentioned this before. I can get really nerdy about, I love my list. I want to sit down. I've got a list of all the movies I've watched through the year that I keep a running tab, and then sitting down and going through and being like, all right.
You take your list. You take your year-end list seriously.
I take it seriously. And
I'm going to take mine seriously,
too. I
get
get way too much enjoyment out of it, too. Like, the painstaking, method of, picking and choosing this one versus this one, I, really enjoy that.
I'll tell you what, though. I was actually thinking about this the other day, and my mind was kind of wandering. It's a really fun year to come up with a top 5 of the year list.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not giving anything away, but we've talked about this before. We got a Scorsese movie this year. We got a Nolan movie. We got a Fincher movie. And then there's been some pleasant surprises throughout the year. So I'm excited about it, too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those for sure that the number 5 spot's going to be really competitive.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree completely. And I've got one. I can't wait. I'm not going to give anything away. One I think is going to be whoa, I didn't see that one coming.
Oh.
Like a dark horse almost.
Yeah, consider me intrigued. What a tease.
Yeah, just a little teaser for whenever we reconvene. But hopefully, we've talked about this. Maybe we can squeeze in some over the winter break. And
then what I would really like to do is our next 2 pods. The next one be our 2023 wrap-up with our top 5s. And then I'd like to do our first ever fan question one and see if some people would give us some questions specifically about 2023 movies. People let us know if we don't talk about one of your favorite movies, what were your favorites, but what were your favorite performances? Just
I've been wanting to do
this movie. Just give us some 2023 questions.
For
us to give you.
Because I think if you and I both went on our personal social medias and explained hey, Jeremy and I need some questions we want to answer on the podcast, I think we'd get some response.
Yeah.
So, yes, I'm excited about that. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make a commitment to you as a podcast partner and friend. I am also going to steal your idea. I'm going to keep a running tab of all the movies I see in 2024.
Nice.
Because I actually went back the other night. I was up and I was scrolling through my Facebook for the year. And sometimes I'll do the thing where it's I check in at the theater. Mm-hmm. It's and I was there was 2 movies that I was I forgot I saw that. I forgot. It was movies I liked too. It just wasn't, I just kind of forgot. I was I'm going to keep a tab, and I'm going to keep a tab of my 2024 movie viewing.
The 2 things I do is I keep track of the movies, and then I put a letter grade. I'm at school, an A, B, C, C plus, B minus.
Just to kind of, so what you were thinking at the time. It's always fun to go back
and be right after I saw that, I remember,
why did I give this a B minus or whatever?
Yeah, that's how I felt about it in that moment. Sometimes it'll change, obviously, but just I always like to remind myself of what I was feeling in the moment when I saw it.
So some stuff to look forward to.
Yeah.
And also, I kind of we're just talking off script here, but I had texted you the other day that they're doing a new Mad Max movie in 2024, which just got my mind thinking about the 2024 schedule. Because honestly,
might have to go upon and just what are we looking forward to?
What are we looking forward to? What do we think is going to land? What is, I also want to squeeze in, I want to take just a bit of time. I want to shout out my least favorite movies of 2023.
Yes.
And that could just be a real quick segment, but
I tend to do that as well. When I give my favorites, I'm usually I have to, here's some.
And I don't know that I could come up with 5 because you're probably like me where it's for me, it's because of time. I have to be selective with what I go to see. So it's I typically don't go see a movie that seems like it's going to be terrible.
Yeah.
But I did come up with a few that I saw that was these were bad.
Yeah, that's generally what it ends up being these days because, we're to the point where, it's not it's our job to see every movie.
Exactly.
Movie critic. So we're not going to waste our time if we don't think we're going to like a movie. So we do skip a lot of the bad. Mm-hmm. So usually what it is, you could probably call it the most disappointing. Because if we saw it, we thought there was going to be something good about it.
And I've got a couple I can name.
Yeah.
It's not like in high school where I literally saw everything.
Yeah.
I miss those days, but I don't get to do that anymore. So, what I do see is more of what a letdown. And I've got a couple I want to talk about. So,
all right.
Man, we just gave a ton of teases. Look at us.
Yeah. People are, those who thought we never prepared in advance.
Yeah. Here we go. We just mapped out 2024.
All right. Well, hopefully you guys will want to come back and see all that with us. And
just one last thing. Absolutely. Die Hard rules.
Die Hard's so good.
I mean, I made myself stop talking because I could still be talking about Die Hard.
We literally could just sit here and just quote every line from the movie and be entertained by like, how good was that?
We could just do like a script reading of Die Hard where it's like you take a few characters and I take a few characters. And we just reenact it. You could be Hans Gruber. You did a really nice Hans Gruber.
I appreciate that. I'm not going to lie and say I don't practice it sometimes.
Okay, good. It shows.
Yeah. We didn't even mention Reginald Val Johnson, who was so good as the buddy cop in that movie that he got a TV show playing a cop.
Based off of it. And his name in Die Hard is Al Powell.
Yeah.
Which is just funny. But, okay, I know we're going long, but like him and Willis are great together, and they're just on walkie-talkies.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. And he has like a nice little arc because it's like he shot a kid, and it's like, oh my gosh, that's horrible. And then he triumphantly pulls it. He's like, I've never pulled my gun since then. And then he does. And Die Hard. Jeremy, Die Hard just rules.
Great. Oh, man. And Al's boss is the principal from the Breakfast Club.
Yep.
Like, just great stuff.
You also got like the jerk reporter. He's the jerk EPA guy from Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
Okay, I think you've convinced me. I think I've underrated Die Hard.
Yeah.
Like I've always been like Die Hard rules. It's an all-time great, but like it should probably be in my top 10.
Yeah.
There's nothing bad to say about Die Hard, is there?
No, the two FBI guys show up, and one's black and one's white, and they're like, Agent Johnson.
No,
Agent
the other
Johnson,
one.
no relation.
No relation, and then he goes, this is Agent Johnson. No, the other one. Man, Die Hard. What a movie.
Perfect.
So glad it exists. All right.
So if you haven't seen Die Hard, go watch Die Hard.
Go watch it.
And that's our Christmas present to you is
to tell you to watch Die Hard and to tell you to skip, some of these movies we listed. You don't need to go watch those. They're not that good.
No. Watch Die Hard and Rocky IV.
Yeah.
And
then your life will be complete and you'll be fine.
That's right.
So good to be back.
Great to be back.
Yeah. The holidays, it's just hard. Like everyone's busy. You're going back to Tennessee, so.
All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us.
That was fun. I was excited.
Yeah. We will see you guys next time.
Absolutely.